Alright, I just had to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to go through a tier list of bot side for all the stratagems. Screw it. I just want to put my mind out there. So I'm just going to start with what's here and going to go left to right. No particular order except left to right. So we're going to start with AP mines. I don't like these things here. I think they're at least C tier. They can kill light infantry. They can kill devastators after 4 or 5, sometimes 6 mines. Utterly useless against hulks, utterly useless against tanks, useless against factory striders. Seriously, they're not okay. They're kind of just bad. They don't have enough arm penetration. They don't deal enough damage. This is a bug weapon through and through. This is... I know what this is. This is autocannon sentry. This thing is fantastic. I don't use it very much, but you could essentially put this and put it right next to a rocket sentry, and they're practically the same thing. The only difference is snappiness and delivery, and I think these are a little bit more effective at dealing with gunships specifically. They're good against all types of bots. They're also an excellent distraction for pulling fire off of you, which is something people underestimate a lot of. When you're surrounded by heavy devs, you toss one of these things out, they start focusing it, this gives you a window of opportunity to escape. And they're not shooting you. And it might kill a few things too. You know, the scenarios when it isn't actively drawing fire, it's actively shooting things, and it has a very large range, and I think overall very effective. Low cooldown, good use. EMS mortar, I'd put this right here in A. I can't really rate it higher than this right here, autocannon sentry, primarily because it can't actually kill anything. However, I can't deny the usefulness and the utility of this weapon, this stratagem. It's particularly good at stunning essentially everything aside from factory striders and gunships, which it can't target. Overall, I think it's incredible, but it can't be at the top of A tier, primarily because it can't kill anything. That being said, it also can't kill Helldivers, so this can be a pretty big benefit as well. And if you're looking for a support item that won't destroy your entire team, this is something to do. This will fill that role, that's what I mean to say. This is this is an easy S tier for me. This is the supply backpack. If you don't know what this thing does, I don't know if you've been living under a rock, take it into a bot mission. This thing essentially gives you 8 stims, 8 grenades, fills up all your ammo, and you can do this to not only yourself by pushing the number 5 key in your number line on top of your keyboard, you can also top off your buddies. So if they're out of stims, it's amazing. The reason why you take this is because stims are amazing against bots. And additionally, grenades are also useful too. I mean, kind of goes without saying. It can't go at the top of S tier. It's going to remain at the bottom of S tier only because it does nothing to kill them. Same as the EMS mortars. On the plus side, it cannot kill Helldivers, so there's that. Well, I think let's get the elephant out of the room. This is the most useful weapon in the entire game against bots, hands down. This thing can deal with every bot unit in the game. It is so good that if you're shooting tier 1 bots, you're wasting ammunition. This thing can down hulks from the front, tanks from the front. It can defang factory striders from a very safe distance. You can engage devastators, all types, from all ranges. The only thing I don't believe you can do, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, is you cannot shoot a heavy devastator in the shield and get him to... You cannot knock the shield out of the way by shooting the shield. From my understanding, you have to aim for something that isn't the shield on the heavy dev, and then you'll kill it. It has a moderate amount of splash damage. However, I think where this thing excels is everywhere. It can down gunships in 3 shots. This thing has saved my bacon so many times just by other players playing with it. It's phenomenally good. And now on to my personal favorite support weapon for bots. Grenade launcher. Yes, it's going right under the AC. This is essentially the cousin or the brother, the little brother of the AC. This thing deals with AC packs. this thing deals with Devastator packs, all types of Devastator packs. It deals with everything. Yes, technically, it can kill everything on bot side. However, there are limitations. Factory Striders, you cannot destroy any of the weapons on a Factory Strider. The only thing you can do is clear the bots that it spews, and if you have the opportunity to get in close and shoot into the underbelly, it can kill the Factory Strider with every round. It can kill gunships, in 2 shots in fact. However, they are incredibly difficult to hit. So this is kind of a let your teammates deal with the gunships, you clear everything else. Now, in regards to everything else, this is the most effective weapon in dealing with heavy Devastator packs, rocket Devastator packs, and just it's uncontestable. It is technically better at dealing with Devastators than even the AC, primarily because better splash damage, better splash radius, fewer shots to kill, and you can reload it on the move. It roughly has a slightly longer reload time, but when you're putting it up against the AC, it practically means it can't be... You really don't notice the extra reload time. The only downside that you have to do is you do have to run this with a supply pack if you intend to use it for the entire mission. However, with that in mind, these 2 stratagems, this is your primary and secondary. And whatever you bring in your primary, that's a backup weapon for when you can't reload the grenade launcher fast enough. Seriously. This is 20, 40... That's a lot of grenades. I don't have the time to do the math right now. You can kill shredder tanks in the face with a grenade launcher. You do not need to aim for a weak spot on the shredder tank. You just shoot it in the turret. It will die in about 8 to 10 shots, depending on splash damage. You can kill hulks from the front. There are a few methods of doing this. One, you stun a hulk with a stun grenade, shoot between the legs, and it depends on the terrain. You can pop the back by shooting it this method. It takes 7 to 10 shots. However, if it is coming up a hill towards you, you can't kill it in this manner. If it's coming down a hill towards you, you can pretty much kill it in 4 shots if you aim between the legs. Or, if you stun it next to a wall, a building, a rock, look to the left, aim behind it, and shoot the wall. It'll basically die. Pop, blow the back out. Grenade launcher is fantastic, primarily because of how efficiently it deals with Devastators. It's the best thing on this list as far as I'm concerned with dealing Devastators. The only reason it can't beat the AC is because it has a worse time against gunships and Factory Striders. That's it. It's amazing. Next, I believe this is the Gatling Sentry. Gatling Sentry. I think it lacks a few things, but overall, I think it could probably go in B tier, maybe C tier. The issue it shares with its machine gun sentry is that it doesn't have the medium armor pen. And yes, if you throw it behind the enemy, it's actually rather effective. But if you drop it down right in front of a pack of heavy devs, typically it's just going to shoot the shield. And really, it can't distract well because, sure, they'll shoot at it, but it can't get any kills in the meantime. So, it will clear tier 1 units pretty quickly. And if it does have decent shots at something that isn't medium armor, it's okay. But I can't really put it above B, and honestly, I kind of feel like it's more of a C tier, maybe high C tier, primarily because it knows how to shoot things. Looking at you, Mines. So, no, I don't think it's really here. Next up, everyone's favorite HMG emplacement. This thing is really good. Where would I place it? There are significant downsides, but there are serious upsides too. I would say I'd put this at least A tier, definitely above EMS. Not here. This thing is phenomenal in a lot of ways. This is an excellent tool for dealing with essentially every Devastator unit. It is overall an exceptional weapon. It deals with Devastators, it deals with... You can actually kill Factory Striders with it. It's fairly good at killing gunships. It's... It's okay against tanks. Oh no, sorry. Okay against hulks. Tanks, you actually have to get off this thing. You cannot kill a tank in the front. And you're a sitting duck, so it will kill you if you sit on it. So combined with the fact that it forces you to sit still while you're using it, which is a downside, believe it or not. I've also noticed that if you take a rocket to the face with this thing, sometimes it'll just straight up blow up and kill you, even if you're wearing the heavy armor with 50% explosion resistance. I'm not sure if this is an intentional or if this is some kind of bug, but it does happen. However, when you put this thing in an excellent position where things aren't targeting you, or you're able to deal with those rocket devastators, and then focus all the other target, this thing is phenomenal. You can even straight up nuke 3 Hulks within 6 to 7 seconds. Even if they're running at you, no stun required. This thing will take down factory striders if you shoot it in the eye. Or better yet, it's actually one of the best weapons to defang a factory strider with. Seriously, this thing is really, really good. I might even put it above or at least on par with the autocannon sentry. Only because you get to choose what targets it's going to target. The issue, I can't put it in S tier because it puts you at such a huge disadvantage. Still, phenomenally good. Also very low cooldown, that's something to point out. Teneri Mines. Let's just do this. We all know why. Fire doesn't really hurt these robots, and the robots that do take fire damage are the tier 1 robots that you can sneeze in their general direction and they fall over. So, unfortunately, they just don't have a role here. It's not their intended role. These are a bug weapon through and through. Who knows, maybe Illuminate will have something weak to these. Next, Gatling Sentry. I'm going to put this right here. I think it could be considered a little bit better than its older brother, mainly because it has a little bit of a shorter cooldown, which technically lets it become more available. It doesn't have as much damage output, but there's an upside to that in that you don't have to deal with, well, you don't expect these two things to kill things. And as far as the targeting goes, I believe it's relatively the same as the Gatling Sentry. So essentially, they're basically the same thing, except one's got a little less damage, but it's also got a shorter cooldown. So I guess it's technically a little better than the Gatling. I mean, I could be wrong on these, but in my experience, they're not very effective at the bot side, primarily due to armor. I can't rate these yet. I don't know how good they're going to be. I have theories. I am not going to rate these. I know there's a bunch of people who'd be like, they're garbage. Tanks don't drive over these fucking things. Those people are fucking idiots and they don't know what they're talking about. Next. Oh, I'm sorry. Did that offend you? I'm sorry. You're a beautiful idiot. Next, normal mortars. I think normal mortars have an excellent slot in A tier. They're certainly not as effective as autocannon. They're certainly not effective as HMG, primarily because even with the targeting upgrade, there are significant downsides to it as, well, there's a time to kill that takes a lot longer than just sitting on the gun. But, I have to admit, it's a very low cooldown. It essentially can't miss, and it has all-around vision. It knows where there are enemies, and it will attack them. One of the downsides to this is, like all sentries, they will just randomly attack things that don't know that anything's out there. They will aggro patrols. So, and while I think that's a slight downside, it's not enough to knock it out of A tier, along with the other sentries that are here. It is effectively the lethal counterpart to the EMS sentry. I think most people know this at this point. They are relatively effective, but they're also good at killing teammates. So, you may wish to consider not taking these. These things are S tier if you're playing on a defense mission, I will say that. Namely because you don't have to worry about friendly fire, because if they're that deep, they're dead already. Next up, Rocket Sentry. Recently I've had a large increase in how much I like this thing. This is one of those... This went from a garbage C tier at best to arguably on par with the autocannon sentry. I feel like the relationship between autocannon and rockets are essentially the autocannon gun and the grenade launcher, except in sentry form. I'm gonna be real with you, that's how it feels. I think the rocket sentry can tank just as well as the autocannon can. Really, the only downside for the rocket sentry is it's got a travel time on those rockets. It can miss. But in most cases, that's not going to be a problem for slow moving bot infantry. I've seen it miss the gunships occasionally. It is very good at hitting gunships most of the time. So I can't really complain. I think this thing is essentially on par with the autocannon sentry. And I think at that point, whatever your flavor is, I personally prefer the rocket sentry primarily, and this is only because of the combination to call it in is a lot more familiar to me. I could easily swap this with the autocannon sentry for 30 games in a row and get used to it. These are interchangeable, and they are effectively the same stratagem. Moving on. The shield generator. Oh boy. Well, here's the problem. Most people think this is useful. A few people think this is useless, but I'm gonna say it. This thing is useful. I can't say it's S tier, but I can put it easily in B tier. The reason why I say it's B tier, not A tier, is primarily because it is good at its job. However, a lot of people have pointed out that it can't soak a lot of damage. And while I've seen a few clips of people showing off that can't soak a lot of damage, what bothers me about this thing is not that it can't soak a lot of damage. I've said this 5 times. It can, in fact, soak a lot of damage. I've seen it take at least 3 to 4 rocket barrages from one of those to down it. And I've seen it sit in front of 3 to 4 heavy devastators and soak fire for like 5 seconds from 5 heavy devs. That's enough to kill a Helldiver like 7 times over. This thing can soak tons of damage. The issue is they don't do well when there's 7 Devastators staring at the shield and going like tards. Of course, it's not going to last very long. My issue with this stratagem is its call-in code, while simple, is very, very long. And for a defensive emplacement, I'm surprised it has such a long cool-in code. Aside from that minor problem, my biggest issue with it is how long it takes to deploy once it's hit the ground. There have been several occasions where this thing will rise up out of the pod, not be able to deploy the shield for a solid second and a half, and a rocket will hit it and blow it up immediately, which is very bothersome. As far as it goes otherwise, aside from those downsides, this thing can be used very quickly, very effectively, and very often. It's got a very low cooldown, so it's super useful. The issue is it's not offensive, so you can't throw it at something. I mean, God forbid you try to throw it at a tank, and, well, a tank with a shield isn't, not a good idea. Don't try that. Next, Tesla Tower. Tesla Tower. I want to put this... I feel like it does have a use. It's useful in B tier. I think it has enough damage to kill bots. And it does ignore armor in most cases. But it has limits. B tier argument, it could be the very low B tier, maybe high C tier. My issue with this is that it's vulnerable. It can be shot. And like every other turret, they will prioritize it. And unlike Bugside, they've got guns. This thing typically can be used in a let's throw it down the middle of a bot drop scenario, and it can work well there, but it won't last very long there either. And that's something that needs to be remembered. Trying to use this on patrols, it'll draw their aggro, and it will kill a bunch of them, but I mean, eventually something's going to kill it too quickly. It could also be placed down here, depending on how it's used. If you just bring it along and try to throw it down in defensive scenarios, it's not likely to survive. And actually, now that I think about it, if you're bringing other Helldivers and they've got airstrikes, trying to throw this thing on a bot drop is just liable to get it blown up by an airstrike. So I will actually put this down in C tier. I think that's pretty wise. Where to put it in C tier? I don't know. I think it's above mines, primarily because it's able to chain kill, it can multi-kill, and it does have a good amount of HP. I will put it in between the two sentries, just so that people understand it's pretty much on par with them. No, I'm going to put it under, because it can't shoot far away. So, it's essentially locked into a certain radius, and then after that it's useless. Also, it's actually pretty good at killing Helldivers, even when they're not in the radius. So, I would actually put this thing, yeah, right here. I think this is fair. Rocket Sentry. Rocket Airstrikes. Where do I put this? Personally, I don't honestly think this is a very good airstrike. I think it's at least B tier. It can be used to deal damage to hulks. It can kill tanks. It can deal with heavy devastators, but my issue with this is there's not enough saturation for this to effectively work. My big issue with this is when you see a pack of devastators, you throw this thing out there, it targets one of them. And that's a problem. That's a big issue. You have to be able to take this thing out. You have to take those things out quickly. Using this on a factory strider seems to be the most optimal choice. And even then, it just doesn't pack enough damage. This is more of a armor stripping tool than anything, and there are better options to ignore armor and kill things outright instead. Like its elder brother, 500 kg. I think 500 kg is essentially still really useful. I could argue top of A tier, maybe low S tier. This is it's incredibly, it's really, really good. You can't break the damage on this thing. It is designed to kill large, heavy armor targets. There are a lot of those. You can also use this on tightly packed heavy devastator groups. It's got a quick call-in time, it's got a relatively quick reload, and it comes with 2 charges. I think overall it's very good, but there is something to say about its longevity. So I'm actually going to put it behind the HMG turret, behind the sentries, and certainly behind these. Primarily because it's excellent burst damage. The issue is, once you use both charges, you're going to be on cooldown for a long time. And typically when bots throw the heat at you, when they're dropping in a factory strider, they're bringing in all sorts of heavy armor, there's way more than 2 or 3 targets that this thing needs to hit. And having something that can shoot things for endless hours, both sentries, I'm talking these two, and your HMG, it's really good. I still think it's worth bringing, especially if you're encountering a lot of, well, hulks, tanks, factory striders, and it's also very useful for clearing some objectives. But I can't put it above the sentries, primarily because it does not have the longevity required to deal with constant waves of heavy armor. So, an excellent thing if you're looking for something that can solve a problem very quickly, and the rest of your kit's on cooldown. This would be an excellent thing to bring in reserve. Oh, this is Eagle Airstrike. Let's just do this right now. I'm going to put this S tier. I do think it is above its bigger brother, fatter brother, let's say. It's so useful. It's so versatile. I would consider putting it above the AC. However, it can't deal with there are some targets it can't actually deal with. Gunships. That is a problem. This thing is useless against gunships. Anyway, that being said, the downsides out of the way, this effectively is useful against literally every ground target in the entire game on bot side. It's just not even you can't even argue against it. You can even pop fabricators with it. I'm not going to complain. It comes with 4 charges if you're fully upgraded on your destroyer. You're perfectly able to resupply this thing, and you can literally save this thing for, oh shit, here comes a pack of Devastators. Let me just not stand next. Let's not stand in front of these things and just throw an airstrike. The reason why it's below these 2 support items is, again, longevity. Though I think it outstrips its older brother, the 500 kg, in terms of how long it will last you in a mission. Overall, I think one of the big issues with it is you only have so many charges before it goes on cooldown. If you space your charges well, if you reserve it, this thing will serve you in so many fashions. So often, it'll feel like it just comes with your Helldiver every mission. And you'll miss it when you don't take it. That being said, if you use it too liberally, every time you see a fabricator, for instance, you'll find that it's off cooldown when you really, really could have used that thing up, that ace up your sleeve. So, used sparingly and conservatively, it's amazing. But it still cannot match the longevity of the support weapons, the grenade launcher and the AC. Anyway, next, this is the Cluster Strike. Cluster Strike, I would treat it as a weaker version of its kin, the normal airstrike. The reason why I can't really put it even here is, while it's good against chaff, that's not a lot up there for that. And it's also very good at killing Helldivers. I'm not sure quite where to put it. It's nowhere near as good as the airstrike, definitely not as good as 500 kg. My problem with it is it can't deal with any targets that are anywhere near. If they have any kind of armor, this thing just does not hurt them. There's just no really getting around it. That's the truth. It's still useful for clearing out tier 1s, but you don't encounter that very often. Honestly, I might even put it down here. That's my issue with it. It reportedly can clear fabricator holes, but I believe you have to get a literal munition inside of a vent in order for it to destroy the vent, to destroy the fabricator. I can't really recommend it. It doesn't deal with anything spectacular except for the little bots, and just shoot it with your fucking primary. Like, at that point, I think it's better than the Tesla Tower, but it effectively serves the same purpose as the Gatling sentries, and the issue is those sentries at least distract the targets, and they do kill tier 1s, and they do last a long time, and they've got a lot of ammo. This thing comes in, blows up a couple tier 1s, and that's it. It's done. I don't know. It's not very impressive on bot side. Napalm Strike. Sorry. This is the same case. This thing can technically do the same thing the Cluster Bomb can do, in that it can kill tier 1s, but fire damage is meaningless on bot side. It does nothing to the vast majority of targets that you want to affect. And why would you... I believe it can kill heavy Devastators, but it takes so damn long. What's the fuck? You might as well just bring the other airstrike. Just bring an airstrike, or bring a... Hell, bring an AP minefield. I think it'll kill them faster. It's just not designed for this theater. That's all there is to it. Again, this is a bug side weapon. It will get a lot more use on the bug side. That is for sure. Smoke. I haven't actually played with smoke. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it can be used. However, stealth is not my thing. I can't effectively give this a good rating. I don't know what to give it. I'm not going to rate it. Primarily because of that. It's going to sit in the... You know what? Let's do this. Hello. Let's just make this thing clear. Okay, moving on. This is the Gatling Strafe? Strafing Run? Yes, this is the Strafing Run Airstrike. I have actually come to really appreciate this thing. The this airstrike has some pretty good uses, actually. When you're encountering a lot of bots, one of the things I've noticed is they don't spread out wide. They actually walk in lines quite sufficiently. Patrols in particular. However, even bot drops. You'll notice Devastators, Heavy Devs, Hulks, they all walk straight at you and they will walk right around each other. They don't tend to spread out. It's actually very good at hitting lots of targets. It's got a very simple entrance code, up, right, right, and pardon, it effectively has the exact things you need in order to deal with lots of heavily armored targets, walking straight for you in a straight line. It does have heavy armor penetration. It can damage a ton of things if it doesn't outright destroy them. I think it's very good. I would put it actually at the top or. I would put it in a similar spot to 500 kg, or at the very least, top of B tier. Top of B tier probably makes more sense. It's very good against heavy devastators. It can damage hulks, rocket devastators as well. Any tier 1 that's in the way just dies, of course. It can't usually kill hulks. I have noticed if it takes one of the rounds to the face, in the face slot, or if it takes 2 to 3 on the back vent, it can down hulks. In most cases, though, it will damage hulks. I can say it does actually disarm hulks pretty often. That being said, it's a low cooldown, it's got a lot of charges, and it comes in very, very quickly and it strikes in a line, which is very beneficial against bots. Also, something to say, it can in fact destroy fabricators. Similar to the cluster bomb, if a munition lands inside the vent, it'll effectively destroy it. And there are a ton of munitions in this thing, and they're all concentrated in a very thin line. Thin, long line. I would imagine this thing can see some use, though it does lag against some targets. I have spanned this against a factory strider. You can deal a lot of damage to a factory strider, but it effectively needs 2 to 3 airstrikes in order to destroy a factory strider itself. Something I have noticed, however, it is very good at dealing with the cannon on top of the factory strider. Typically, you can pop that thing if you line it up perfectly. It'll pop it in one airstrike, which, for something that takes to command and throw out and comes down in about 2 seconds, 3 seconds, I think. Very, very good. I think due to the fact that it's got a low cooldown, very short time, very, very short call-in sequence, and just its overall effectiveness, I think it's something that you can bring and spam reliably, but it doesn't have the overall effectiveness as, say, the Eagle Airstrike. Though, again, it's burst damage against bots, so pick your poison. Next up, heavy machine gun. I think there's going to be a lot of people who don't like me. I'm going to put the heavy machine gun right about here. I think the heavy machine gun is a perfectly useful, very well used A tier. I would pair it right next to the HMG, but I'd give it this slight edge, primarily because you can move with it, and you don't need to wait for it to be called back in. That being said, there are some downsides. First, very long reload time. Second, it is not the most accurate thing in this game. It does have a lot of recoil, unless you put it on the lowest setting. There, you can really get some lots of chugga-chugga, lots of accurate shots with this thing, and I've really warmed up to it. It can, in fact, one-tap Devastators if you hit them in the face, due to, I believe they gave it the multipliers to damage to heads in one of their recent patches for bots. So basically, they take accurate headshot damage now, and it's been 2 or 3 months since that's been implemented. I think my biggest issue with the HMG is, in order to get effective accuracy, you have to put it on the lowest setting. And one of the things that I've learned with bots is the longer you're exposed, the more likely you're to suddenly take lots and lots of damage. So being able to whip around a corner, dump a bunch of damage, and then get back into cover quickly is typically the way to go with support items. One of the downsides with the heavy machine gun is you have to stay out and exposed for a long time to deal with lots of damage. So it does have that downside. Also, it's very ammunition heavy, but if you're running this thing, run the supply pack. Save you a ton of time. I guess the last thing I can say about it, and the reason why it's really up there in A tier, aside from really able to deal with Devastators pretty well, it's actually phenomenally good against gunships. Gunships are one of those targets where this thing just shines. It's really good at putting those things in the dirt. And I would argue it's even better than the HMG, certainly. Just primarily because you can take it with you wherever you go. You don't have to call it in. You start with it on the mission, and if you just pick up ammo, it stays with you the entire game. So I particularly enjoy this, though if you do lose your primary support weapon, that's where the HMG can come in and save your bacon. Shorter cooldown can give you more uses. So it's really kind of it's just the HMG with legs, if you really think about it. Let's go to the next one. Oh, the orbitals. So 120, I really like these. I'm not sure where to put them. So my issues with these are very, very good utility. However, they just can't do things that other stratagems can. Okay, let's try this again. I think the orbital bombardments, because they're effectively the same, I'm going to put them at top B tier, maybe low A tier, somewhere in between here. They are on a 3-minute cooldown if you have a full upgrade. My problem with these things is I feel that they're too inaccurate to really assist you in a lot of ways. One of my biggest problems with these things is trying to use them when there are bot drops is like gambling. You might get the big strike, or you might not. You might hit the drop ships and kill every unit on board with the explosion, or they might just land safely and not take any damage. You're guaranteed to kill things, but you're not guaranteed to kill everything. That being said, these are wonderful, absolutely wonderful at clearing bases, softening up big bases, and you can outright just clear a base by yourself sometimes. These two stratagems particularly shine on command bunker missions. They're just very good at okay, bunker, throw it in, watch it blow stuff up, and if it doesn't outright kill the bunker, well, you walk in there and everything's dead. Basically, you just walk up to the bunker and blow it up. Sometimes it'll just outright kill the bunker. I will skip ahead. Oh, no, I won't. Let's just leave this here. I will put these right next to each other. They're excellent for dealing with bases, and on a 3-minute cooldown, they're perfectly spammable. I think overall they deserve to be recognized as excellent for map clearing, but they can't be used reactively. You can't drop these at your feet and run away like an Eagle airstrike. And while it does have long-term sustainability, it lacks in accuracy. So overall, I think if you're using this to clear bases, reduce the number of enemies in a base before you assault it, or just throw it at a factory strider, you'll pretty much kill it right away. Utterly useless against gunships in my entire experience. Can't target them. Otherwise, perfectly acceptable A tier. Maybe low B or high B tier, but that kind of goes without saying. Oh boy, here's one that I don't play with. This one is, geez, what is this thing called? Orbital Airburst, I believe it's called. I don't play with it at all. I can't really honestly give it a rating. It's never appealed to me. I've seen it used, but I just don't think it's got enough mustard. I think it's got less concentrated power than the strafing run. That could be wrong. I just simply don't know enough to know. So I will put it down here and move on. EMS strike. Man, I want to love this thing. I really do. But so long as stun grenades exist, I can't give it a very high rating. This thing used to be phenomenal on bug side. Back in the day when this thing used to stun Bile Titans, oh my god, you just bring this thing every time you need it, you bring it, throw it against a Bile Titan. And the same could be said before Factory Striders existed. Now though, well, now that stun grenades exist, I can't honestly say that this thing is a good thing, but it isn't a terrible thing either. There are downsides to it. It doesn't kill anything, so it can't ever sit at the top of a tier. However, I will say I'd have to put it above the shields, primarily because it proactively disables the enemy, makes them sitting ducks, and allows you to either retreat en masse or straight up just go shoot them in the face while they're stunned. And it's a good 20-second stun. So it takes a long time. It's also got a very short cooldown and a pretty good size. That being said, one phone call later and I'm back. Alright, let's just pick up right where I was. Gas strike. I'm gonna just put this right here. At least the fire strike can kill things in the initial blast. At least this can kill tier 1 units. And granted, gas strike has a much lower cooldown. Granted, it deals damage over time. I feel like this damage is abysmally bad. And not to mention, it does not affect all bots, just like the other two. I don't quite know, out of all these three, I have no idea which one of these is even remarkably or close to good. I don't feel like Gas Strike is worth taking, considering how many highly armored, heavy health units you're going up against. This thing doesn't affect Hulks. It barely tickles Devastator health pools. And sure, it can weaken them, but, like, why wouldn't you just take, like, I don't know, just like an airstrike? Why wouldn't you take something that can deal direct, massive, heavy damage? If it survives something like an airstrike or the strafing run, for example, you can pretty much kill it in 2 to 3 shots. If you hit this thing with a gas strike, you have to wait for its health to get low enough in order for you to begin to use it. Also, it doesn't, in order to begin to kill the thing, the Devastator, Hulk, if it even affects Hulks, doesn't affect tanks, doesn't affect Factory Striders, whiffs on gunships. I guess it can kill tier 1s, but that doesn't say very much. I mean, the sickle, the scythe can kill tier 1 units, and that thing sucks. I don't know. I just don't think it's very high on the list. I can't really put it very high. It doesn't have enough. The damage over time isn't enough. It doesn't do anything against all the targets. At least on bug side, you can throw this thing on a bug breach, reliably get a ton of damage. You won't outright kill everything like Brood Commanders or Bile Spewers, but it will guarantee weaken them. It'll even work against Chargers, but there's just too many targets on the bot side for it to actually deal enough damage to be worth bringing. You might as well bring, like, I don't know, literally anything. I would take a Tesla tower over this thing. This thing will actually kill targets. I'd take AP mines over this thing. Let's be real. It will. AP mines will kill targets. Just not efficiently. This thing might kill tier 1s, and you'll be lucky to get away with that. Insofar as my experience goes. Sorry. Orbital Barrage. Whew, this thing's good. I love this thing. This feels like a miniature orbital that you have constantly. You have this thing on demand pretty much whenever you want it, whenever you need it. It can kill Devastators. It can kill... I've seen it kill Hulks, but most of the time it will just severely or moderately damage them. I've seen it disarm them as well. I haven't seen it kill tanks outright, but I believe it can damage them, especially if it hits them in the vent. If it's a Shredder tank, I believe it can kill them, primarily because their turret is not heavily armored, just in the front. This cooldown, combined with its area, combined with its medium damage, Honestly, this thing just feels like a third orbital bombardment on a lower cooldown. And actually, that's literally what it is. It's a Gatling bombardment. Duh. I think this thing is just phenomenal. I do kind of think it's above the other two in terms of combat usefulness, but it falls off in terms of base clearing, primarily because I don't think it can kill fabricators if you throw it on them, and it doesn't have enough area to take advantage of it. That being said, being useful against Devastator groups, which, in my opinion, literally kills the most Helldivers, I think it kind of puts it above these two. Honestly, and combined with the cooldown, I think it's right up there with... Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I think this thing is better at just overall versatility than the 500 kg. Eh. Okay, that's better. I don't know if this can hit gunships, and you shouldn't be aiming for gunships anyway. But it is a column, so technically I think it can hit them. I have no idea if it will even damage them. But overall, against literally anything ground-based, this is amazing. It's low cooldown, it's area saturation, it can stun, it can't stun things, but it can outright bounce them around. What's the word? Knock them around, make it so that they can't shoot you. It's really good, and I highly recommend taking it. And it does last for a long time. It's an excellent piece of equipment that you can bring with bots, and just, if you don't want to take the big barrages, consider taking one of these. Next, orbital laser. Do I have to say it? Like, right here. This thing is, if you thought the orbital bombardments were good at base clearing, this thing is phenomenal. I love this thing so much on bunker missions. Command bunkers, oh, this thing is amazingly good. Do you understand how simple a mission can be when you just want to destroy a base? You don't want to go in it. You don't want to fight a million billion bots. You throw this thing, it goes in, it blows up all the bots, it'll pop every fabricator in that base, and if it misses a fabricator, it's killed everything in the base. You walk in and you go, I did it. Boom. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. This thing wishes it had the charges and cooldown of both orbitals. If this thing didn't have charges, it would be straight up better than everything else in the entire mission. There are limiting factors, and it's got a long cooldown. And, well, you only have 3 charges before you can't use it for the rest of the mission. So there is the downside. But its incredible capability is I need help now, or I don't want to go in that base, let me just toss this thing in there and deal with this now. Boom. Problem solved. Done. Easy S tier. The only reason I can't put it higher than anything else is because it has a limited use and a long cooldown. Next up, Precision Strike. I would put this pretty much right next to 500 kg. This is effectively an orbital version of the 500 kg. It's got some problems, like it can have a very long call-in time depending on planetary conditions, or it can straight up miss considering other planetary conditions like orbital dispersion, which that shit can get you killed. But if you don't have those two conditions, this thing's really good. You can use it on a fabricator, you can use it on tanks, you can use it on stunned hulks, you can use it on groups of devastators who aren't walking very fast, or stunned devastators. You can drop this thing on essentially everything except gunships, structures. It really does feel very similar to the 500 kg. I can't really put it above or below kg, primarily because it's on-demand burst damage that has conditions where if there's some planetary shenanigans going on, it could be better or it could be worse than them. The one thing I will say is it's technically it can have more uptime against bots, primarily because there isn't an entire base dedicated to turning off airstrikes. There's only an entire base dedicated to turning off all stratagems. So technically speaking, you'll be able to use this more than 500 kg, but really, they pretty much go hand in hand. They feel the same to me. So if you like orbitals, take this. If you like airstrikes, take that. That's really all there is to say. It's good, all around good burst damage. Can't complain. Orbital rail cannon strike. I don't disagree with the effectiveness of this tool. However, I disagree with its, well, target prioritization. We're talking about a side where it takes all of its efficiency and puts it into medium units that have medium to heavy armor, and high armor immobile units, and says, that's my forces. We have some tier trash, but not much. And then you compare it to bugs, and bugs have everything we have is lightly or medium armor swarm tactics. And we have one unit that has a ton of armor, Bile Titan. That is the only target for this thing on for bug side. It's really good at killing Bile Titans. However, it's the same issue with the 500 kg. There are too many targets for this thing to be useful against. And that's an issue. It's got a 5-minute cooldown. And when you chuck this thing, if you aren't throwing it at a factory strider, you're wasting your time. You're wasting a cooldown. And I can't really agree with it. It's just, there are much better options. I would take a 500 kg. I'd take an orbital precision strike. I would take orbital laser over this. Like, come on. It's just too long of a cooldown, and there are too many targets that this thing could hit, but you don't want to waste it on anything less than a factory strider. And I'm going to be honest, factory striders are not that dangerous. They really aren't. They don't chase you for 30 minutes. They don't try to puke on you and slow you down so everything else can kill you. You can literally walk away from them if you've got cover and distance. I guess if you do bring this thing and you're feeling a lot of heat, sure. But, I don't know. I'm really only going to chuck this at factory striders. And I've heard that there's even a glitch where it will target other things instead of the factory strider. So, take that as it will. I can't really put this very high on the list. I'd have to put it somewhere in B tier. And it's good at killing targets, but there's just not enough cooldown. Just can't justify this thing. So I think somewhere in B tier sounds good. I should put this over here. I personally think that this belongs probably between this and Rocket Strike. I'd put it under Rocket Strike. You can at least reuse Rocket Strike, and it can kill Devastators. It can kill Hulks, or at least if not kill them, severely damage them. I can't put this thing very high on the list just because of those reasons. Smoke Strike, same thing. I have no clue. I don't use Smoke Strikes. It doesn't appeal to me. That's my problem. So I can't fully agree with this. Anyway, next, Walking Barrage. I actually have kind of come to agree and like this thing. I don't take it on every bot mission, and I don't take it when I'm feeling in the mood for just sitting back and watching things blow up. But I do admit it does have uses in the same way that both of the other bombardments work, in that they are good at clearing or softening bases, and everything else, there's other uses. If you're going on a command bunker, typically I will run all 3 orbital barrages and a laser. Pick light armor with the limb. The extra limb health, and you can chuck this thing further. You can chuck stratagem 30% further. And I will just run around, find bunkers, throw these things down. They all have under a 3-minute cooldown, so you can typically just dogpile a base with these things and kill the command bunker instantaneously. Run to another one, throw a laser down, and then start running to the third one and have your orbitals ready again. You can basically solo clear an entire map of command bunkers with all these together. That being said, obviously the walking barrage is probably the weakest. There's just no real use for this thing. Like, the walking capability is just eh. Like, there's not very many situations where you can use this thing. You can use it as a kind of a base clearer, but it just doesn't do a good enough job compared to the other two. I don't know. I haven't found a real functionary use for the walking feature, but it is still an orbital bombardment, and it does have a slightly lower cooldown. Also, I will say this: its call-in feature, its call-in command is write down. It's like write down, write down, write down, write down. That's it. So it's very simple to call in. I just can't really get behind it. Or I guess have no need to get behind it. Next. Ooh, we're done with the orbitals. Yay! I've had enough red for the entire day. Let's move on to a very good weapon. This is the AMR. This is a very good weapon against bots. It's not my cup of tea, and I think there are significant downsides to this weapon, but if you play it right, effectively, it's good. However, there are some problems with it. First up, let's get some of the good statistics out of the way. With accurate aiming, you can basically one-tap Devastators from extreme range. If you don't outright kill them with a body shot or two, this thing can also two-tap in the faceplate Hulks. Very good. You can deal with cannon turrets very, very effectively from extreme distance as well. This is your literal sniper that deals with heavily armored targets. There are a few downsides. First, its magazine capacity is very irritating. Ugh. That's when I'm going up against units, I always tend to find that I'm running just a bit shy. Just a little short. Let's actually put this in the tier list where I think it deserves to go. Overall, I think it's very good. I think it's above HMG in placement, but below HMG. My issues with the sniper rifle don't stem from its effectiveness, but playstyle. Typically, when I'm playing against bots, I'm rolling with the team, I'm providing the anchor, I'm clearing the heavy devastators, I'm clearing the rocket devs, and I'm supporting them when they're engaging other targets like gunships and factory striders. I clear the chaff so that you don't have to. So when I take a sniper, the last thing I want to do is run off on my own and try and lone wolf it. Maybe if I'm having a real bad day at work and I don't really feel like playing, just mindlessly clicking, I'll take this with the jetpack and go try and find a rock to camp on and try and snipe the entire map. But it's not my play style, but I can't deny the effectiveness of this weapon. If I take the time to really get to know this thing, maybe. But I still find that it has the same problem as the HMG, where if you are in combat with things, you're in combat with them for a long time. And the longer you're in combat against bots, the worse it's going to get. So, I don't typically like to take this weapon. Moving on. Ooh. Oh, somebody hit F for respects. This thing. This thing is not good. I'm going to put this right here. The arc thrower is just not designed for bots. I've tried to use this thing. I love unlimited ammo. I think it's really useful. This thing cannot handle anything on bot side. I have taken 1, 2, 3, 4 salvos to kill devastators, and the bounces don't guarantee that they're going to kill things behind the one you've been shooting. My experience with the arc thrower is that it's good at tier 1 units, but it's terrible against devastators. It takes far too long to kill the devastator you're shooting, and any devastator that you're shooting at in the chain doesn't typically get stunned, and it doesn't take full damage. Typically, this thing just ends up being a gigantic waste. And while it can stun the target you're primarily shooting, Devastator, it's completely useless against hulks, tanks, factory striders, gunships, cannon turrets. It's not good enough for the bot side. And I have to put it, honestly, I just can't put it anywhere good. It's just not good enough. On the bug front, different story, but that's where the Arctur is going to lie. And again, this one really suffers from the longer you're in front of the longer you're engaged with bots, the more damage you're going to take. So compile that with all the negatives, there are hardly any upsides to be used here. And unlimited ammo just doesn't justify it for me. Next, this is... put that down here. It takes way too long to reload. Wait. Nope, that's the shield. Sorry, I get this one mixed up with the guard dog. This, I actually really kind of appreciate this. I think it's a pretty good tool. I'm going to put it next to the other shield. This is a more personalized version of the bubble shield. And if you're really in the mood to take a pommel iron, a submachine gun, or if you're memeing, take the dagger, you can do a lot with this. If you like the lone wolf but don't like dying so often against devastators, this can save your bacon a lot. And it's also bugged at this point in time. I believe they can't see you if you're hiding behind it. I've had lots of occasions where this thing will straight up just not be seen. You be crouching behind this thing and they can't see you. And you just watch them walk away and go shoot your friends instead. And I think that kind of takes away from what you want with this thing. You want to soak damage. You want to eat all the blaster bolts. Not to mention that it still gets knocked around by rockets. And that it can be destroyed. I don't know why they programmed that in. It just feels kind of dumb. So I think it goes next to its other shield buddy. It's just more personalized. And it does have that stealth usefulness for the moment. So I think that's where it goes. I believe this is the Commando. I'd have to put the Commando probably up here. I still think Commando's very good. I'm not sure if it's extremely good. Again, this is the issue of burst damage versus sustained damage. And I think while you can dump your rounds and essentially kill a Hulk, it doesn't do well in a long-term firefight. Additionally, it doesn't one-shot Devastators, from my recollection, unless you hit them in the face. But it will knock them around, which is nice. That being said, it does have a very low cooldown. It's got 4 rounds in the magazine before you have to get another one. If you're looking for disposable damage, and if you don't have a rifle slot equipped, or if you have one that you're not afraid of dropping, this can serve very well. I think the Commando is perfectly useful as an A tier, but again, it has this issue where it's disposable. You're not going to get a lot of uses with this thing, so I think that kind of puts it down several pegs. Also, you can't reload it, so it's... I don't know. I don't particularly appreciate the effectiveness of this weapon. So, I think very low A tier, actually. Let me put this down here. I still think it's useful, but remember, it's disposable. It will not last as long as the grenade launcher. It certainly will not last as long as the AC, so no. Moving on. Ooh, the mechs. My mech experience has been this. When you do the objective, when you sit down and you're extracting citizens, when you're digging soil samples, this is the time to call in a mech. When you're extracting, you've got a 5-minute extraction timer. This is when you bust these out. This is your shit's coming to me, and it wants to kill me. This is your I'm ready for that fight. Come get me. There are downsides. These things don't like rockets. They don't like blaster bolts. And when you call one of these in and you get in, you know I'm going to die in this thing. Basically. I think for those scenarios, it deserves to be at the very top B tier. It has a ton of ammunition. The Patriot has a ton of ammunition. Oh, wait a minute. Variants. Right. I can't put the Patriot very high. I believe its chain gun is literally the Gatling gun. just with a ton of ammo and legs. It does come with an upside of it comes with rockets. I don't know though. Those rockets aren't particularly deadly against bots, but they do kill bots. So sure, I just don't think there's enough of them. Personally, I think the autocannon one is much better. I think overall, I think I'd put it at the top of B tier, primarily because in those situations where you need power, you know it's coming. You know that soil sample is going to bring a bunch of bots ripe for the plucking. Just concentrate that fire. Boom, 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 boom. This thing will give you a ton of ammunition, tons of fire. It'll let you kill hulks. It'll let you kill tanks. It'll let you kill factory striders, or at least defang them. It'll let you kill devastators. This thing tears through devastators. It's not even funny. The reason why I can't give it an A tier rating is certain mission types, you can't bring it. When you're running around doing command bunkers, you can't bring this thing. You can't shoot a command bunker with this thing. When you need to come in and destroy the orbital cannons, what are you going to do? Walk up to it and shoot it? No, you're going to walk up, get out, call in a hell bomb, blow it the fuck up. That's the problem. Some mission types aren't very... They don't favor the Emancipator. And while it can deal a ton of damage to a ton of enemies very quickly, it can't really follow you. It can't follow you around the entire mission like on bugs because it keeps pulling aggro. And bots have guns. And this thing doesn't like guns. It certainly doesn't like rockets. So you're better off using this for specific missions where its power is going to be put to good use because they're coming for you anyway. Might as well face them and destroy them. In those scenarios, I think this thing is catapults to S tier. I don't know if it's better. No, I do think it's better than the AC in those scenarios where you're calling in a soil sample. This thing will tear through robots. You will die eventually. You're too big to hide. But you will take down at least 100 robots if you get the pulls. If they bring those things in, you'll keep tearing through them, no problem. Shit, I think you can just shoot down the fuck. You won't even have to let these things touch the ground. You're aiming up at the dropships, going, "Come on, more dropships! I still got 50% ammo." That's crazy how much damage you can do with the Emancipator in the correct mission type. That being said, there's only one or two of those on the bot side, so take it as you will. Really, if it's soil samples, this thing's amazing. Take it, 100%. Oh, I think these are EATs. I'm gonna just slap these right here. I think they are comparable to the Commando. They have a lower cooldown, and you get 2 shots versus 4. They effectively do the same thing. It's just, I don't know. I kind of want to put it below the Commando, primarily because shorter cooldown, half the ammo. It's just, I don't want to have to call these things in every time I need one. And typically my teammates are already bringing their own support weapons, so they're not going to be able to utilize them. That being said, I can see where the EAT can be useful. It does decent amounts of damage. It does commando levels of damage. So it could be used in conjunction to support fire, but this is assuming that they've lost their support weapon and can't call theirs in for another 3 minutes. I think one of the biggest downsides for me with EATs is it's just very irritating to have to call these things in every 90 seconds. I'd rather have something that has more ammo capacity and a longer cooldown, and that's why I think it ranks under the Commando, but basically they're interchangeable. It's a discount. It's just cut in half in pretty much every spec, aside from damage. So, Flamethrower. Come on. We know where this goes. This is a bug weapon. You don't bring this here. This is like bringing a butter knife to a swimming competition. This does nothing for you. I mean, at least you can look cool. The butternut? Wait. No, it's useless. Laser robot. I don't really like it. Uh, ugh. You know, honestly. Hmm. Hmm. I mean, infinite ammo is good. The issue for the laser dogs is that there's just. They don't have enough range, and I have a hard time taking them. They just don't seem to have enough effectiveness. There are scenarios where there's a bunch of T1s, particularly the jump pack ones, where this can be useful. I just don't think it's useful enough. I mean, you go up against heavy devs. Why are you that close to a heavy devastator? It's gonna melt you before this thing's gonna melt it. It's useless against all the other high value targets. Hulk, tank, factory strider, that just it simply doesn't have the firepower. If you're this close to any of those targets, either you're flanking them and shooting them in the back, or it's a factory strider and it's turning you into meatloaf with its main guns, and you're wishing you brought something else. So overall, honestly, I think it's even worse than the AP. You know what? I think it goes down here. The top of D tier, only because it follows you around and it will kill things occasionally. But it also takes up a backpack slot. And you can really, are you really going to take this? Or the thing that gives you literally endless ammo, stabs, and grenades? Come on, not even close. This is. Okay, anyway, next. I mean, do I really need to explain this? It's the medium pen version of the guard dog that has to reload every time it goes to take 5 shots. It's like it's like if the laser guard dog couldn't hold its bladder in because it's old. This is the laser guard dog that has an enlarged prostate, essentially. So yeah, I can't really put this here. It does have medium pen, but it's just somewhat irritating how often this thing has to reload. And granted, it's got infinite ammo and it does penetrate medium targets. But again, it's a range issue as well. It doesn't engage targets at long range. If you want to bring something with medium pen, bring one of the two sentries. I just think they're a better overall addition because they've got way better range and they don't even have medium pen and they'll still clear targets. At the very least, they'll distract things for you. So, jetpack. Ugh. 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 I want this thing to be useful. This is never going at the top of any tier that you bring it in. Um, the issue is it doesn't have the mobility required. It doesn't have the verticality. It doesn't have the the distance, the horizontal travel distance to really warrant taking one of your entire slots. I feel like if they took this jetpack and turned it into a booster that gave all your Helldivers a pair of jet boots, for example, I would really like to take that just because I don't like losing a backpack slot for this. Occasionally, I'll take this with the AMR and I'll go plinking, but every other weapon on this list just kind of doesn't enjoy this thing. With the exception of perhaps the laser cannon or the quasar cannon, mainly because they have endless ammo, but my issue isn't with what it can be paired with, it's if it had the exact stats of the dark fluid container jetpack, I would put this thing maybe at the bottom of A tier, but it doesn't. It just doesn't. I don't know. I'm not sure how effective it is. It's a support item. It can't kill things. Let's switch that over real quick. Um, I personally think that it's gonna be at the bottom of C tier. It's for funsies. It just and there's not enough oomph in it to make it a good traversal tool. And like I said, if they made this thing into a booster that gave jet boost to all your buddies and had the same stats, I'd consider it. Just because it's something that gives you a little bit more extra terrain, but really, I just don't think it's worth a backpack slot. It's just not good enough. This is the machine gun. I think this is a useful weapon. Machine gun, it's not the heavy machine gun by any means, but I will put it above these two in that it has medium armor pen. However, I find that the time to kill on Devastators is surprisingly long for something that has medium pen. Even in the face, this thing isn't necessarily the best tool for dealing with the primary threats. It can penetrate. Basically, if there is a target the HMG can engage, this thing can also damage it. It's just got more ammunition, and I mean, more power to you. If you just like to want a bullet hose, but still penetrate heavy targets, this thing's pretty good. I don't know if it's A tier material, but it's certainly better than a lot of other things. Yeah, I think B tier is probably a more fitting home for this. In that you have a lot of targets that you can shoot, you've got a lot of ammo, it's very basic and very straightforward, but there are better performers than it, and I feel like that you'd be better off just picking an HMG and dealing with the ammo problem. The recoil isn't anywhere near as bad, and it does have a pretty good fire rate, but I think the time to kill kind of drags this thing down a lot. Ooh, here's a controversial take. This thing is pretty okay, but I would honestly rate it very similarly to the heavy machine gun. My issues with this weapon are numerous, and most of them have nothing to do with its damage, reload, or profile. It has everything to do with that stupid HUD indicator that spins like a fucking top, and the god awful sight. I didn't think it was possible to blind yourself even more than a laser pointer could, but that reticle, I can't see the laser pointer shooting out the end of this thing. It's very annoying. Oh, it is the worst thing in the world I have to deal with. I have to go into my settings and turn the reticle on my HUD off for all weapons in order for me to effectively use this thing. Why do I need a HUD indicator for a literal giant laser pointer? I don't even need even in the scope, why do we have like this little LED? Turn that shit, just make it a piece of glass with 4x magnification. I am holding a giant laser pointer. If you fix this, the infinite ammo on this thing, and its incredible accuracy and medium pen, make this a pretty good tool for dealing with a lot of problems, especially from range. This is one of the best tools for dealing with gunships, just because if you can shoot them from anywhere, and if you miss, whoop-de-doo, you have infinite fucking ammo. It's literally really good, but it's held back in so many departments. I will even take this on heat planets. That's not enough for this thing. This thing's really good, but it is such a pain in the butt to use because of those two stupid HUD reticles. It's just terrible. It's a giant laser pointer. Come on. Anyway, Quasar Cannon. I'd say it's at least more effective than the laser cannon. It does. There are limitations. I can't put this above the Emancipator, but I can put it above the HMG. This is the you want to shoot and scoot. If you're not in the mood for sitting and being a long range engagement tool, if you want to take a pot shot at one thing and then get back on the move, this is good for this. This can take down a gunship. This can kill a Hulk that you shoot in the face. This can kill a tank if you shoot in the back. I think you can. I'll have to verify that. I think the Quasar Cannon is pretty good, but it also suffers from the problem of the 500 kg in that It's burst damage against bots. And typically, when you're engaging gunships, there's more than one. When you're engaging hulks, there's typically two of them. When you're engaging devastators, there's like 20 of them. You don't want to waste this shot on a devastator, but it can deal with gunships and it can damage factory striders. It can kill hulks in the face, and it's infinite ammo. And all you have to deal with is that charge up time. If you prefer this over the laser cannon, I can understand why. And I can't blame you for taking it. I think it's a good tool. I just think that burst damage isn't necessarily the best against bots, just because of their sheer. They spread all their stuff out instead of putting it into one charger or putting it into a Biotitan. They spread it out amongst many devastators, many hulks, many tanks, many gunships. That was thunder. Anyway, I don't know if God agreed with that one. Oh no. Well, I'm going to do everyone a favor and put this right here. I don't know. This feels like it's so painful for me to put this poor thing down here. You would think that a railgun, a thing specifically designed to penetrate heavy armor, would excel at dealing with bots. I don't know what the fuck they did to nerf this thing. This thing did not deserve the nerf. This poor thing. Anyway, I'm not going to sit here and complain about past problems. I feel like this thing is essentially a quasar cannon that reloads much faster, has ammo, but it's got enough ammo to make it feel like it doesn't matter. The issue is the targets that this thing needs to engage are very limited, and it's a problem. The issue is the plus sides. It can kill hulks if you shoot them in the face. You don't even need to put it in unsafe mode. You can just slap that thing in safe mode and blast those things right in the face. They go down easy peasy. It's very ammo efficient because it's got 20 rounds in it. I just that's the only target that it's good against. And that's bad. In fact, I have to put this down here. I feel that I have to put this down here. It's worse than the arc thrower because at least the arc thrower can damage other units. But the problem is it can't deal with devastators in the same manner unless it hits them in the face. If it killed them, if this railgun had enough damage to kill devastators by hitting them anywhere in the torso, I would very much consider this thing a lot higher on this list, but I can't. Because it's only got one good target, the Hulk, and that's just not enough anymore. Hulks are not your biggest threat. Devastators are, and there's 6 of them. And if you can't deal with the first Hulk efficiently, how are you going to deal with the other 5? And it's radiant, so I'm going to try and speed this thing up. This, very comparable. This is recoilless rifle. This is very comparable to, I think, the rail cannon, except it's got a lot more targets that it can engage. Primarily, you can use this against fabricators, you can use this against devastators, and you will one-shot devastators if you hit them in the face and not the shield. Not rocket devastators for some reason. I'm not sure. You can kill tanks if you hit them in the vent. You can also kill hulks if you hit them in either the vent or the face. That being said, it's got a very long reload time. Though I admit, it does have a large ammo capacity. My downsides for this thing is it does force you to take a backpack. I would give it a little higher of a ranking. I have to put it above the shields. Primarily because it can be team reloaded with a buddy, but that forces them to have another backpack that's dedicated for you. And I don't know. I don't think this thing, in those niche scenarios where, again, if you're on a defensive position and you're able to get a buddy who can help, you can shoot things like you can take out hulks if you're accurate. You can take out most targets, but it's just not enough. I don't think there's enough splash damage to justify using it. And there are better options to take against Hulks. I've seen people put these to good use on defense missions with a buddy who's reloading, but I just think it's kind of meh. It just doesn't have enough good targets. I think it sees a lot better use against bugs. Next up, Airburst. Yeah, that goes right over here. This weapon can be used to clear things. I don't know. It doesn't deal enough damage against heavy devastators. It doesn't deal enough damage against anything above a hit. Like Hulk, tank, just can't deal with these targets. If it shot down gunships, I'd give it a better rating. But really, this thing's only good at dealing with low tier trash. If you need to shoot 2 of these into rocket devastators or heavy devs to kill them, well, let me remind you, this thing has the longest reload time of any support weapon. So yeah, remember that when you're thinking I can two-tap an entire group. Let me put it this way. Instead of taking this, why don't you just take that grenade launcher and go hunt down some heavy devastator groups? You'll do a lot better. Personal shield. Oh boy, this thing's really good. I'm going to put this at the top of the shield list. Mainly because this thing's very good at soaking damage, and if you want a personal way to stop you from getting bounced around and you don't mind losing a backpack slot, it's good. I think it goes right here. It does its job, but it can't kill anything, so I can't put it anywhere near the top of any tier. Will it save you from getting ragdolled a bunch? Oh yes, absolutely. And if ragdolling is not your thing, take this thing and be a selfish shield boy, and no one will blame you. The spear. I'm gonna put the spear right up here at, well, let's see. I think the spear definitely goes in A tier. Where it goes in A tier, I think is up for debate. The spear does and brings a lot of utility. My issue is ammo economy is not the best. Its reload is decent, and its punch is fucking unrivaled. This thing can knock out command bunkers in two rockets, and I'm pretty sure you can either 3 to 4 kill a factory strider. Also, this thing is the range king. If you get on a map and get on top of one of those big hoodoos, big mushroom stone formations in English, this thing can rain fire and death from above like no one's business. There are, in fact, several ways you can get on top of these things. Simply by having a friend throw all your stuff under them so they land on top. Let the friend kill you, and they'll call you in directly under a hoodoo, and you'll land on top of it, grab your stuff, look down there, shoot them, call them in, and they will land up there and join you. The only downside is once you're out of ammunition on top of a hoodoo, you have to figure out how do I get down from here without killing myself? And when you can't call in stratagems on top of the hoodoo, that's a really long fall. So, be that as it is, the spear has a lot of potential. It can knock out gunships in one reliable shot. It can lock onto targets from literally a map away. And it's very effective at dealing with most targets. There are some exceptions for close range hulks. They can't engage those targets, they're too close. However, distant hulks, reliably, I can 1 to 2 shot them. Typically, I will launch a spear at a hulk, and if it doesn't outright kill it, I will pretty much just say, okay, it's either 2 steps from dead, or I shoot it in the back vent, and it'll end it. A lot of times, this thing will knock off armaments on hulks as well. It's very effective against tanks as well, though I do find that there are some issues when it comes to shooting the main battle tanks versus the shredder tanks. Shredder tanks, typically it will one-shot them. I have seen instances where you'll hit the main battle tank in the turret and won't auto kill it, but you'll put it basically on death's door. You can throw it like an impact grenade at it and it will die. So, very close, very good weapon, very useful. Also can destroy fabricators, don't forget that. Last, the stalwart. This is a weapon that rewards you if you're accurate. This is a weapon that is very good for dealing with tier 1 trash. However, that's not enough on the bot side. And I think it kind of just goes in the same place as the arc thrower and the railgun. That's where its issues are. If you have reliable damage, if you can hit things in the head with this thing, go right ahead. You'll have endless ammo, but the issue is once you engage targets like Hulks, again, the armor comes into play here, and you can't really use these things. So I'll zoom out. I'll let you guys take a look. This is my tier list, and this is my 50-minute video explaining it. Oh my god, I am so autistic.